documentary, we're going to discuss gay marriage and its evolution through time, what it was like in the 70s and what it's like now. And we're also going to touch on the religious aspect of it, the Supreme Court decisions, and we're going to interview some special guests later on. This is a map of the United States in the year 1999, and as you can see, no states allowed same-sex marriage. The dark gray states actually had legal bans on same-sex marriage, and the black states had constitutional bans on same-sex marriage. And today, things are a lot different. We have 37 states that allow same-sex marriage. There's only 13 that don't, and those are identified by the red states in this picture. And it really shows you how far this country has come in the last 15, 16 years. Popular opinion on gay marriage has changed drastically. In 1996, about 70% of people opposed gay marriage, and today that number is down to 40%, and more people actually support gay marriage than oppose it. This shift started to occur around the year 2004, which can be seen in the graph.
Even though change has occurred, there are still people that do not approve with it. In the past 2 decades, several religious groups have moved to allow same-sex marriage, including the Reform and Conservative Jewish movements, the Unitarian Universalist Association, and the United Church of Christ. At the same time, many of the largest religious institutions have remained firmly against allowing same-sex marriage, including the Roman Catholic Church, the Orthodox Jewish, Southern Baptist, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The more religious a person is, the more likely they are to oppose of gay marriage. And as you can see by this chart, the younger a person is, the more likely they are to approve of same-sex marriage, rather than older.
I'm Anthony Minori. That's my actual name, but the students call me Mr. A.
How has gay marriage evolved since you were younger?
Well, it changed in the sense that it became available. When you think about it, when I was in high school, any thought of that was not even on the horizon. You know what I mean? And what is interesting is 2 years ago, I think it is now, two friends of mine who I know from other acquaintances. I got to know them. They're much older. One is 75 and one is 85, and they got married last year in New York when New York had the gay marriage law instituted. And they did that because when you're a spouse, you're entitled to the higher earning spouse, Social Security upon death. And they've been together, they started later in life when they met. They've been together like 17, 18 years. And so Tom and Al decided that would be to their advantage. Tom is much older, he's 85, but he has a greater work history and would have higher Social Security benefits. So they got married. So he's quite elderly now, and I'm not sure how much longer he'll live, but now Al will inherit his Social Security and have higher benefits. So that was one aspect. You know, there are many different things when you're married that you're entitled to. You know, inheritance without having to pay capital gains tax or inheritance tax. The right to visit your spouse in the hospital. That you can still be barred in those states that don't recognize gay marriage. So lots of little issues.
Why do you think homosexuals should have the same right to be married as everyone else?
What it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, the Constitution says we're all equal. So, and you can take that back to women's rights, and you can take that back to black community rights. Black people were only considered 2/3 of a person many years ago. So, is that right? Women had no right to vote. The only way a woman could own property is if her husband owned it and he died, and she could inherit it. If he stated that, if he sent it to a nephew, she was out. That's all had changed.
How do you feel about gay marriage being legalized in Florida?
It saved me a trip from going to New York, which I was planning on. So.
The full faith and credit clause of the Constitution states that one state has to recognize the licenses from other states. So if you get a driver's license in one state, another state has to recognize that you have that license. And the same goes for marriage licenses, except for gay marriage. So if you get married in New York and you go to a state that has a ban on gay marriage, they do not have to recognize that you are married. And it's a constitutional right that they should have to recognize that.
Everyone should have the same rights with marriage, because a normal couple, when they're married, they're allowed to go visit each other in the hospital, they can get each other's social security, and they have all those benefits. Gay people don't have those benefits when they can't get married.
In 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act, which essentially made government recognize that they were not going to allow gay marriage. It denied same-sex couples the same marriage privileges as different sex couples had. And then in 2013, the U.S. v. Windsor Supreme Court case actually determined that the Defense of Marriage Act was unconstitutional.
In California, the lower court overturned the state's ban on same-sex marriage. In 2013, the Supreme Court case Hollingsworth v. Perry stated that the people opposing same-sex marriage cannot appeal that lower court case decision.
The same-sex marriage evolution has occurred all over the world. In the past 15 years, almost 20 countries have legalized same-sex marriage. In Ireland, the vote to legalize same-sex marriage for Ireland is coming up. The Netherlands legalized same-sex marriage in the year 2000, and it wasn't until three years later, in 2003, that Massachusetts became the first U.S. state to legalize gay marriage. And today there are 37 states that have legal gay marriage, but it's still not the whole country. We still have bits and pieces of our country that don't allow it, when there are 20 other countries around the world that completely allow gay marriage.
This summer, the Supreme Court is going to rule on whether or not the whole country should have marriage equality.
It'll be interesting to see what they decide, given that this country has come a long way already.